The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today and investing your time in this webinar. We also want to thank you for submitting some questions at registration. Those are very helpful and they help us form this webinar to suit your needs. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can enter them into the questions tab on your control panel, and we'll get to as many as we can. Today's presentation will be posted on our website, so you can look at it and go back and review it whenever you'd like. Today's topic is proposal habits worth breaking, and it reveals input from a survey we conducted with several hundred proposal professionals, and we are so grateful for their input. We have with us to address these habits and share personal insight two successful proposal professionals with experience in many different markets, and we appreciate them time and their expertise and for being with us today. First up is Liz Warniecki, who is a business program manager and senior proposal manager at Microsoft. She resides in the Atlanta, Georgia area and supports internal Microsoft sales and pursuit leads on strategic pursuits. She also interacts with bid and proposal teams globally and has worked in a variety of markets and industries. David Bohl is the Senior Vice President of Business Winning Services at Shipley. He oversees, coaches, and mentors hundreds of proposal professionals supporting client pursuits. David is a sought-after presenter, an APMP fellow, and is well-versed and experienced in all aspects of proposal development. Thank you both for joining us today. Brad Douglas is also here and will moderate the webinar. Brad is Executive Vice President of Global Strategy at Shipley. So without further ado, Brad, take it away.
Okay, well, thank you, Mallory, and thanks to all of you, and especially David and Liz for spending this time sharing their thoughts and insights. You know, we thought this was an interesting topic when it was first presented to us, and so, you know, it is true. We all fall into this these habits, you know, and thankfully some are good and some are not so good. So here's the agenda for today. And again, thanks for investing some time. We'll talk about very briefly a habit. What is a habit? Why do we develop habits? That's not the focal point. The focus point is if there are bad habits that creep into our proposal work, what are they based on what all of these practitioners have told us, and then how can we try to overcome those? So yeah, we're going to focus on some bad things that go on in the proposal world, but don't despair, because we're then going to have Liz and David give us suggestions on overcoming some of those bad habits that creep in. And then time permitting, we'll be respectful of your time, and time permitting, we'll try to answer some additional questions. And Mallory, feel free to chime in and interrupt if there are questions that deserve a response right away. Please chime in. And we got a lot of questions when you registered that helped us shape this as well. So just quickly, a habit. We turn to just the good old dictionary to see what it is and what it isn't. Well, it's a tendency or usual manner of behavior, like he is habitually late for stand-up meetings. David, don't comment on that. I'm talking about yours truly here. So it's a tendency or usual manner of behavior that can creep in, good or bad. It's an acquired mode of behavior that has become nearly or completely involuntary. This is what's scary. If we're doing things involuntarily when we're working proposals and we don't even know it, and no one brings it to our attention, it's a problem. So an example, I wrote my proposal in passive voice. It's a force of habit. The third definition, a behavior pattern acquired by frequent repetition. All right, frequent repetition. So we've got tendencies of usual behavior, involuntary, and frequent. And those can be a problem if you put all those together into something we're doing unknowingly that might keep us from winning work and winning business. So just a couple of philosophical things about habits, why we form habits. We're human, and almost all actions that we do are learned behaviors. When we're learning a new behavior, it requires a conscious effort, an expenditure of energy. But on the flip side of that, then, once we successfully learn a behavior and repeat it, the degree of conscious effort required decreases, and the behavior becomes more of an automatic subconscious response. So the more we do something and expend energy and focus on it, the more it is likely to become a habit. So that's what we're here to talk about today, is what are some of these bad habits that creep into our work as proposal professionals, and how might we overcome those and get back to some best practices that we should be doing. Just real quick, so that especially David and Liz have a feel for who's on this webinar, would you please answer the question in this poll so we get a feel for who has joined us today? Go ahead and answer that question as best you can. Okay, so there you have it, David and Liz. That'll probably help guide some of your thoughts. We've got half of the group, their primary role, proposal managers. We got quite a few proposal writers. Some are contributors, SMEs, technical experts. We've got a little bit of leadership and executive, and a few that aren't terribly involved in proposal work. So that should help shape the discussion. So here we go. We put out there a survey to a whole lot of folks that work proposals day in and day out, and ask them about two things: bad habits that they see creep in, and then what would you recommend as key best practices to overcome or eliminate some of these habits? So we're going to go about this in kind of two phases. First, the bad habits. And I think, David, I'm going to call on you to take a shot at this first one. I'll read it and go ahead and share your thoughts as a very experienced practitioner. Bad habit observed: not planning and anticipating for every possible variation and interruption. For example, schedule changes, contributor availability, getting the right people at the right times, color team reviews, facility or online preparations. What are your thoughts on not planning and anticipating well?
Well, this is kind of a tough question because we as proposal managers, we are expected to plan. I mean, one of the things that we are expected to do is come up with a schedule, and we are expected to, come up with an outline and begin to create a picture. And I think that's good. I think what we fail to do, Brad, is we fail to take a look at what could happen if. And so, the good thing to do here is make everyone aware of what your expectations are immediately. There's a couple questions out there about procrastination and get senior leadership involved, and how do I, take the, oh, I'm not a proposal manager person out of it. And those are all relevant, but what we need to do is make sure that everybody understands why we have a schedule, the senior leadership included, because often we do not include them, and so they're caught by surprise and they have the busiest schedules. So we need to make sure that we have originally the plan in place, but how many times do we get an amendment that says, okay, now instead of this month, it's due next month? How many times are, you ask for a contributor and they're not there? Okay, make sure you know their manager so that you can go to their manager and say, hey, I'm not getting Brad. Who's the backup? Is Liz the backup? Can I go to her? So, what's important here is constant communication, constant planning and constant thinking in the back of your mind. I mean, you have to be prepared for these because, people will have schedules and now you might ask them to contribute another month because of an amendment, and they may be able to, but they may not. So it's important that you talk through other people, especially senior leadership and especially the key managers that are watching over the subject matter experts that would help you with the color teams and so on, that you just know and understand what the options are and can execute. So yes, the good news is to have a strong initial plan in place. But the second thing is to, know and have backup dates for red teams, for pink teams, for gold teams, just in case, so that if and when that happens, you're not totally caught off guard. You have plan B to be able to execute.
Good. Contingency planning. And I know Liz and I are familiar with a situation where, we've got a member of a proposal team, and she's expecting her first child here in a few months, and it's in a European country where that means she gets an awful lot of time off, because of some government regulations. And thank heavens we know well enough in advance for something like that where we can develop contingency plans. But like you said, sometimes we're just flat out surprised and caught off guard. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask Liz actually take these next two habits. This next one, it says losing control of versions and proposal drafts. It costs hours of time tracking down the correct version, or more often than not, rewriting parts of the document. Also, the stress and anxiety it costs is immeasurable. Version control is a lesson often learned the hard way. Amen. Okay, Liz, take it away.
Amen. It is absolutely a lesson learned the hard way. That's how I learned my lesson many years ago. Everyone who has lived in that multiple version land on a high profile deal knows how important version control is. And unless if you've been in that situation, you will know that this has to be discussed up front. So I'm going to start by saying that we all have our own methods of leading or managing a bid, but I really want to stress that it's important that we lead or manage a bid, and setting your standard for version control is part of that. Don't make the bad habit, don't assume that everybody knows what your expectations are around version control. There's no right or wrong method. If it works for you, do it. That's good. But don't assume that everybody agrees and understands the importance of version control. The fact of the matter is most people don't even think about version control. And as proposal managers, we know the importance of version control. Now, recognize too, there's always going to be habitual rule breakers. No matter what we tell them, they're not going to do it. It happens. Maybe it's as simple as asking a question to the habitual rule breaker. Do we all agree that we're going to put our content into the document on the SharePoint site so we don't have challenges with the version control? I'd even follow up with, did I hear a yes from you too, Brad? Did everybody hear a yes for Brad, or was it only me? So use humor if it works for you, use a method that works for you, but recognize it's something that has to be discussed. It's not something anybody else is going to think about except proposal managers.
Fantastic. Great. Good advice. All right, let's go to the third one that was most prominently mentioned in this survey. Not following the strategy and the plan set forth. In other words, foregoing the color team reviews. These are not necessarily connected, but this came from the same person. So another habit, bad habit, foregoing the color team reviews, as it's seen as time consuming when they would rather be working on the proposal. So they're seeing the color teams as a time waster. let me just go work on the proposal. Interesting. Compliance gets missed and messages get garbled. Liz, you want to have at that one?
This one's near and dear to my heart as well. Compliance is something I always think about first. I'm sure we all do as proposal managers. You might hear me say this a lot, and I think I said it a little bit ago. I can't stress enough how important it is to lead or manage a bid, and setting the strategy and believing that your strategy is the best plan for the development of that deal, of that proposal. That's the meat of what we do as proposal managers. So I guess the first good habit I want to reinforce is believe in yourself and your skills as a proposal professional every day. Believe that what you do is important, because it is. Because things like color reviews help us put out the best possible document we can put out. So talk with your sales team or whoever has the relationship with the customer. Make sure they are on board with you that this is in fact important. Go into the meetings with those sales team members knowing that your skill and your strategy is what's going to help the salesperson with this deal, with this win. That strategy part is big. Compliance, and like I said, it's very near and dear to my heart. It should be automatic for most proposal managers. Don't let anyone sway you, that you know what your right outline structure is to be compliant. And I'm not talking about other proposal professionals. Talk to your other colleagues if you need somebody to help you with the outline to be 100% sure you're compliant. But don't let other people sway your outline or your compliance. If you've looked at it and you've determined you know what's right, know that you know what's right. I had a salesperson tell me one time that we didn't need the second table of contents. He was referring to the compliance matrix before it was completed. And once I explained why it was there, why it was important, because there were multiple documents that fed into the outline, he understood. He was never really on board. He didn't like it, but he was also supporting what I said. He said, Liz said that it has to be there, so it has to be there. So that compliance matrix, compliance piece, get your team members on board with you. Talk with them about it.
Excellent. Excellent.
Everything else.
Okay. Thanks, Liz. David, we're going to have you address this next one. This is interesting. When I saw this come in multiple times from multiple professionals on the survey, trusting without verifying. So trusting capture data, making sure it's documented and communicated to the proposal team. In other words, whoever responded to this survey question is saying there's a lot of mistrust out there between capture and proposal, or sales and proposal. And then the second part of this, proposal team members need to understand the proposed solution and the value statements or value propositions. So, David, what do you think about trusting information without verifying as a bad habit?
Brad, I don't trust anybody.
Come on.
Oh, folks, by nature we trust, and I think one of the reasons we trust is, we now have a very compressed timeline. A lot of these proposals will do in 30 days. A lot of moving parts, and so as the proposal manager, often our primary goal is to meet the timeline objectives and get this thing out the door on the date it's due, and so we have a tendency to trust. And I think the bad habit there is, as we begin to write to the proposal or evaluate what others have written in response to the criteria, the requirements, we begin to see a lot of holes, and we begin to see a lot of gaps, and we begin to understand, perhaps too late, that in fact what we needed from capture, what we needed from preliminary intelligence, capture management intelligence, and the proposal message. Remember, the capture plan feeds the proposal content. If we do not have that, our probability of win begins to suffer immeasurably. So I think what we need to do is not just trust, but we need to kind of demand a accurate and complete capture plan. I think we need to post it in a very visible place. We used to have actual physical war rooms Perhaps technology and or the COVID virus has made that invisible, but it doesn't prohibit it from being shared out on a SharePoint site or a common server. And so demand from the people behind the scenes, typically a capture manager, perhaps a program manager acting as, or the salesperson who knows the customer, demand that capture plan, and demand that it is a living document and it's constantly updated. A lot of times the capture plan comes in, and then really quick in the actual response time is an industry day, and there's an incredible amount of new information sometimes proposed that not too many people knew about. So pay attention to what's out there. Don't trust, but be doubtful that the capture plan is totally complete from the very beginning, and make sure that you are asking the capture people to constantly be updating that, so we are offering the client, our customer, the latest information and the latest possible solution improvements that we can.
Great, thank you. And just to add a really quick comment. Sometimes we see that we confuse what David's referring to as a capture plan with an account plan. So a lot of BD or sales organizations, they have really excellent account plans, which is how we're going to penetrate or retain this particular account as a client, as a customer. That is not the same thing as what David's referring to, which is a capture plan, because a capture plan is specific to that opportunity, not the customer account. And so it's important that we understand, and that our teams understand in a broader sense, that bringing to the proposal team an account plan isn't the same richness of data as an opportunity or capture plan that's specific to that deal, to that opportunity. So I just wanted to clarify the difference between account plan and capture plan. David, actually, I'm going to have you go ahead and address these next two screens and slides. This one really is a combination of a couple bad habits that someone shared. Not getting the price to win right, and sticking to it and bidding to it. And then point two, we don't want to dwell on price too much. We don't have time in this webinar, but the second one is interesting. Bidder-centric response versus customer-centric. Too many features versus benefits. Your thoughts?
Well, the first one's kind of tough, Brad. We as proposal people, quite often, we don't get privileged to a price. And then the other thing that's kind of frustrating is a final price sometimes is really not brought into a picture until the entire proposal, all the elements, all the work breakdown structure, all the basis of elements are included, and so we don't have the final picture until we have the final solution. So, my habit there is, if you are allowed to be involved with that, don't pester them too hard too early, but make sure that they are looking at your solution and make sure you're convinced they are pricing that same solution. What we can't have is at a red team, when we're bringing in critical people and there's a disconnect between somebody who has knowledge of what we proposed and they say, did you think about pricing this? And we go, uh-oh, no, we didn't. And just remember that any significant change, because we didn't bring in people at the red team, will now also cause a price adjustment. So the better habit there is to just make sure that there is good communication between all the people that are contributing solutions, both technical and people and hours, to the pricing, and making sure that the pricing is aware of what's going on at all times. The one down below is probably, I'm going to speak on behalf of all of us. It's something that, a lot of questions out there were about this, and in the evaluations I do from a red team perspective, we make a mistake. We have a very bad habit, and I have no way of coding this with sugar. We talk about ourselves. We talk about our solutions because we're comfortable, we're confident, and we know what we can offer. Who cares if it's important to the customer? It's what we can offer, and so we talk about it. And engineers are the worst. They have to explain in quantity because that's how they evaluate accuracy, and so they promote features. And what happens is two things. One, we lose the customer focus, and features are not bought. Benefits are bought. So here is the way to break that habit. Begin every major section, begin your executive summary, begin every major section, and constantly begin paragraphs within these sections by restating the customer need. Why, these requirements are based on customer needs. Yes, you will have a solution to them. That's important. But more important is, how does your solution support that customer need? When you begin to focus every paragraph starting out with their need, now you begin to focus on the customer need versus your solution, and it creates an entirely different mindset. It begins to build trust with the evaluator. It begins to create believability, and it promotes a higher evaluation for you because now these evaluators believe that you get it. It's not about you, it's about them, and they want to read about them. And now if you want to encourage them to buy, you answer the question, so what? So what is 100%, not 99, 100% focused on a benefit. A benefit answers to their needs specifically. What does it do for you to improve your situation and answer the requirement that you have asked because of your need? When we write a benefit-rich, a customer-focused rich document, our probability of winning increases dramatically because now all of a sudden the evaluators want to work with you. So the habit is always begin and think first of the customer, both in your writing and with a benefit that solves their needs.
And you've blended into the very next one, David, which is perfect. This next one, starting by talking the solution instead of focusing on the customer challenges. So, like you said, the so what and the why. Prove you understand the why. Why have they put that particular requirement in there? There's a reason, and we've got to respond to that. So thank you. I think you really hit on both of those habits. I'm gonna deviate here a little bit. There's a question I'm seeing. We will keep these anonymous, by the way. I'll give Liz the first shot at this, and then we'll go back to the next habit from the survey. But Liz, take a shot at this. Our CEO is very, capital VERY, very involved in our proposals, which we value. However, he tends to contribute at the very last minute, causing us to cut our deadlines too close for comfort, sometimes literally minutes before the proposal is due. So here you go, Liz. How do I approach this issue with him?
That is a tough one. I have lived in that world. I completely understand that. I think, congratulations. That's great news that they're very integrally involved. That doesn't happen all the time. That's fantastic. I would strongly suggest getting on their calendar, putting the time on their calendar. I don't know if you've done that yet. And rewarding the good behavior. Thank you so much for being so involved, but we almost missed this deadline, or we almost didn't get this submitted on time. And yeah, I understand your calendar's busy. How about if I put time on your calendar for your review on this date at that time? And you might not get the success of getting the time on their calendar, but they also need to know the repercussions if their late involvement makes you miss a deadline. So I would also make sure I say, if we don't get on your calendar and we miss that deadline, we're losing X number of potential dollars revenue to the company.
Excellent. Very good. Okay, this next survey response we got, there's really 3 parts to this person's submittal, and I think we've pretty much addressed the 2 and 3. So Liz, I'm going to ask you to address
Sure.
that first one. Poor kickoff preparation. It seems like that could be a habit we could fall into, is to not do our homework there. Comments?
It could be. So you're right. It's not always the proposal manager's fault, because a salesperson is going to come in and say, here it is, and I want to have the kickoff tomorrow. One of my little cardinal rules with my new proposal managers is don't let that salesperson dictate to you when you're going to schedule your kickoff meeting. Again, be that leader, and you determine the schedule so that you can get all your prep work done, especially if there are a lot of topics that need to be covered on the kickoff, and you need to identify the owners of those topics and get them to participate in your kickoff. The worst possible scenario is to have developed those bad habits of having a kickoff, everybody can't participate, and then you have to schedule 3 or 4 follow-up calls because everybody wasn't on the call that you needed them to be on. So you be the one to make sure that you determine when the appropriate time is so you can get your kickoff prep work done. Now don't put it off. Don't let that be interpreted as I'm going to schedule it when I want it. That's not the way this works. We all know what proposal management means. We all know that there's a lot of upfront work. So make sure you're on it. Be dedicated and disciplined to do those pieces. But when the salesperson says, here it is, and I want to have the kickoff tomorrow, have your answer ready. What's your response going to be? It can't just be no. It can't be I don't want to. Think about what works for you, what's going to work to make that clear that you have a lot of prep work to make sure that you're getting the best possible team assembled to cover everything you need to cover.
Before we leave this, Liz, because this question was just submitted, and it's timely, what are your suggestions for kickoff preparation? So we just talked about that in light of COVID distancing. Any recent innovative ideas that you've seen work? Now, I know your environment. You work mostly with virtual teams anyway. So let me start with you. Is there any nuances given the current state of the health situation, Liz, that we're in, that are relevant?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head that's changed because we have worked virtual for so long. So I don't know if there's any immediate impacts because of people, maybe because we've been doing it so long that, I'm sorry, Brad, I can't come up with anything that says, maybe it's just getting on calendars to make sure you're getting everybody who could be potentially need to be a part of a kickoff meeting, to make sure that they are sending you acceptances so you know they're going to be there. Sending them the agenda in advance to make sure that if you have somebody who's speaking on a topic for 10 minutes, that you know that they're going to show up. Whatever your timing is for scheduling your kickoff, check in with everybody that they can be there through their acceptance to the meeting invite, and make sure that if you have those people who are going to be speaking, that they have said yes, they can speak to that topic the way you want it addressed.
Yeah. So in someone who's been working in a virtual environment for so long, it's probably not a whole lot of change. And
Right.
David, in our situation where a lot of our teaming work with many of our clients, the vast majority of that is co-located. It's face-to-face, sharing workspace and things. So I know we've had to adjust, and our proposal managers have had to adjust. And it's like Liz said, it's really, you got to probably spend a little more time preparing, communicating, and distributing content than you do when you're face to face. When we're virtual, it's just, we've got to cover all bases. So thanks for that question.
Yeah, Brad, the other thing, I would agree with that. Communication is huge. And just like on this phone call, you've got to remember that now that we are not in the same room, you are crossing multiple time zones. And, I was on a call yesterday where 3 of the people that we were, reviewing our final red team documents were in Europe. And so, we're sitting there at 1 or 2 o'clock and someone said, hey, thanks for staying up until 2. And you realize, wow, you've got to take into consideration and understand how to communicate and make sure that just because it's convenient for you, it may not be convenient for them, and you may give them something that you expect them to respond to immediately, and they could be sound asleep legitimately.
Okay, there's another question. I see a lot of time executive summary, and then we'll get back to some of these pre-submitted. Executive summaries are written in the end by salespeople. Is this the right practice? Salespeople writing executive summaries at the end. David. David, have you muted yourself, David?
No, Brad, I had
go.
to dial back in. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So my quick question, and then we'll get back to these pre-submitted ones. Someone asked, they see a lot of executive summaries that are written in the end by salespeople. Is this the right practice?
Nope. No, folks, we need to give our team a better habit is to give our team at least a draft of what the solution is so that we're all on the same page from the very beginning. By doing it at the end, a lot of your writers will take a best guess at what the solution is, which causes costly rewrites at a very difficult and, tense time toward the end when you really see the light at the end of the tunnel. A better practice is, through gate reviews, the executive leadership team should have had a preliminary idea of what a solution would be for this with a draft RFP or at least a preliminary, review of the final RFP within a very short period of time in a very succinct but, draft format. We should have the customer's needs stated, the primary based on Section M evaluation. Here's our solution, here's our benefits, and here's what we're going to do to show you how our solution solves those. And that should be your preliminary executive summary.
Yeah, good. Okay, Liz, let's take this one. Kind of a 3-part here. So the third one I think we've addressed pretty well already. Cutting and pasting. Cutting and pasting without editing from previous proposals is one, and then not enough graphics with captions to tell the story. What do you think?
Yeah, this is I know everybody who's been a proposal manager knows or has taken a previous proposal for a Coca-Cola and changed it to Pepsi-Cola because they just seemed like there was a lot of relevant material. It's a very bad habit, partially because they don't have headquarters in the same city. So if you're saving and just changing it from one to the other, you're going to have a problem. If you're lifting content from another similar proposal, it's not a best practice. I do not encourage it. But if you're looking for content to respond to something, paste it into a separate new piece of paper, new document. Go into it there. Start marking it up. There's value in reusable content for sure, but don't lift it and place it into the new document. Edit it before you move it in. Put placeholders in the place in that boilerplate where it might need a graphic. Put a placeholder where you see nothing but features and put those yellow highlights on where it needs benefits. Go back to the salesperson and say, hey, you were the one that wanted to take this previous proposal. Here it is. But it's missing graphics. It's missing benefits. It's missing customer-specific content. Find something that has great value. Get the graphics person engaged, talk with them. Graphics people love to take concepts and turn them into pictures. I love having those conversations with the graphics team. Get them to read sections and say, can you put a graphic in there? Can you help me find something? And then go back to your salesperson and see if it speaks the message that you want to get to the customer. But get those graphics people engaged early if you're taking content and want to get something with less words on a page. Get those graphics people, they love that part. I love working with them there.
Who, in your experience, Liz, who generates captions that go with graphics?
That's a challenge because we all go back to the horse graphic. There's a picture of a horse and somebody, the technical teams are going to want to go right underneath of it and put horse. But I like to, as a proposal manager, I like to be the one that owns that. But you're going to have to explain to your team why those action captions are important, because they're going to go back and correct it. And they're going to go back in and take the caption you take the time to structure around a racehorse being better than a farm horse. And they're going to go back underneath and write horse. So I think the proposal managers own it. I think there's a lot of controversy and people don't understand the value of the action captions. So you might have to have some conversations with folks to make them understand the importance of those action captions.
Excellent, thank you. All right, David, we'll push this one to you. And again, I think we've addressed number 3 pretty well, but these responses said delays in commitment of the proposal team members. How do you deal with that when you've got members of the team that don't seem fully committed? And the second one here, changing our offer. In other words, not freezing the solution too late in the process and what that does as a bad habit. Thoughts?
Yeah, Brad, there's 2 things going on here. One, you and one, your schedule. And the schedule kind of addresses the second. I think one of the best habits of a good proposal manager is a very realistic schedule. And, we have some very good guidelines about how far in on a 30-day, roughly 10% should you have your kickoff, and 30% in should be your pink team, and 75% in red team, so on and so forth. Make it realistic. And so, the more realistic it is, the easier it is to commit to it, because it gives everybody a reasonable amount of time. And, we've had this question earlier, and Liz did a great job answering it. Get the buy-in from the leadership. They do 2 things. One, once they know the schedule and once they adhere to it, now you have them on your side. So a little bit to the first one is, if I have trouble with a team member, I can go to a senior leadership. I may, as a proposal manager, may not have the authority or the horsepower to go to a manager or to go to that person and say, hey, I need you. But if I know the manager, or if I know somebody, and this person's absolutely critical and their non-commitment is an issue, don't be afraid to build relationships with their managers and either get them involved or get an alternative. I mean, it's a professional thought that, you have to get this done by this amount of time, and what they are not doing and providing is affecting other people. And that kind of fills into the changing offer too late in the process. So again, lead by example, start your meetings on time, commit to what you're asking for and commit to responding to the people's needs, walk the halls, or, make periodic phone calls or send periodic IMs or emails and say, how you doing? Your date's coming up this Friday. Are you going to be there? And the point is, you were in a collaborative environment to begin with to get all this organized and outlined and assigned to the appropriate people. Now all you're doing is making sure that they commit to that schedule. And so gentle nudges here and there is acceptable, but lead by example. Make sure that you are doing everything that they expect of you, so there's no, well, hey, I went on vacation for 2 weeks, well, so can you. No, unfortunately at this point in time, the proposal is the most priority, highest thing in your life. And so, make sure you're leading by example so that everybody else will follow your direction, your guidance, and the scheduling of events.
Thank you, David. I'm hearing kind of a common thread here. A lot of discussion about leadership and taking charge and collaborating. And this next one's interesting because it's almost the flip of the previous topic on the previous slide, and that is not a delay in commitment, but too many cooks in the kitchen, too many differences of opinion, and not sticking to the strategy, which we've addressed. And then this other one, the second part of this, sidebar meetings, sidebars where people get together and discuss what's going on and may or may not share it with the rest of the team. So, David, you want to just touch on these real quick as well?
Yeah, this is the second part of that's tough because the pandemic and working virtually makes that very easy to happen. Hey, Brad, I'm going to call you up and talk about this, and you and I talk about it, and guess what? We don't share it with the team. And you and I come to a solution, but and it may be impactful to other sections, but we don't share it, and that's very damaging. So, we have to a couple things. The first part is make sure that in every imaginable format on the walls or in your SharePoint site or whatever, that the strategies are known. And if I am a proposal manager, I build those strategies into the proposal development worksheets, and I make sure that they're in the outlines in each of the volumes. So, make sure that we all know that. That's the easy part, and that's a simple good habit to fix. Just do it. On the other hand, we have to encourage one another that, hey, if you are making these comments, please provide input somehow. And I'm not sure I have a really good solution for that. I do know that I need that content, and so I want to encourage people to, go in and make a comment on a draft that's the current latest volume or the latest configuration, or call me up and discuss it with me. Make yourself available. But the key to the team is we need to make sure that we are constantly communicating, and especially in this world today, that's a really tough challenge. And so do whatever you have to. We at Shipley just made sure everybody can IM with one another. So, communication is immediate. Email, as long as it's not maybe proprietary, that's fine, and so on and so forth. But we've got to stress communication. We've got to stress that these sidebar communication get put into and there's no easy way there, folks. You're just going to have to stay on top of it.
I will put in a plug for Microsoft Teams here. However, what a fantastic tool.
It is, yeah.
For this very reason. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, last one here, and then we're going to do a very quick summary because Liz and David, you did a great job of not only confirming these bad habits that creep in, but articulating good habits that we should be focusing on. So we have one more of these habits that was submitted, and then we're going to go real quick on the best practices because we've pretty much addressed them. And here's one for you, David. How about this?
Poor diet, Brad. If this were a Zoom meeting, you would see that I don't suffer from a poor diet. My diet and I are very robust. Anyway, folks, what you can't do, and this is usually a scheduling or lack of somebody not committing, which affects somebody else, or there's just so much, we have a version control issue, or we just waited too long, and we've had 4 months to do this, and now we've got 2 weeks, and we're working 60, 70, 80 hours, 100 hours. That's just not acceptable. Again, what you have to do to make this work is you have to enforce the incremental milestones, and the pens down doesn't mean, that's close of business on Monday doesn't mean, or Friday doesn't mean opening of business Monday. It means close of business Friday so that we can work on it perhaps through the weekend. So make sure that you enforce the deadlines, get support from senior leadership if you're not getting that, and just make sure that you have an accurate schedule that allows for everybody reasonable time to do their job. And I think you'll be fine here.
Awesome. Some work-life balance.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, proposal management can depend, on a lot of heroic effort. Unfortunately, it doesn't have to, but it does too often. Okay, we're going to do kind of a lightning round here now, and we're just going to go every other one. Start with you, Liz. If you would just kind of read the best practice and a quick comment, and we'll summarize these. We're going to have this in print for you on our website. So if any of you want to go back, print it off, and have available, it will be there. Liz, what about this best practice?
Oh, yeah, buy-in and participation from senior management. Ask for help the moment you think you might need it. Please stay on top of the status of all of your proposal all the time. Please make it a habit to interact with your senior management team. Of course, they want the revenue, so of course they want you to be successful. My favorite story is when I was a very young proposal manager, and I took my list of challenges to a senior VP, and I went, this is bad, and this is good, and this is what needs attention. He knew I knew that proposal inside out and backwards. And back in the days when it was legal pads, he was writing on his legal pad in his office, and he looked up and he said, Liz, when you are in command, command. And in other words, he wasn't going to answer my questions, and I had to figure out how to answer them. It was the best advice I've ever gotten in business, and if I saw him today, I would say thank you. But it was because I took the time to go to him and say, here's what I needed, what needed attention. That really helps. Interaction with the senior VP is important, senior team.
Great. Another best practice idea submitted from the survey. David, just briefly.
No, just like Liz said, leadership is your friend, not your enemy. They really appreciate the revenue. They know there's going to be some hiccups. Get them involved, get them on your side. Stamina, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and even 30 days is a marathon. Don't just, make sure your schedule's active and reflective of all the key milestones that you have to do, and just pace yourself. And then, get the best people. Try and sometimes that might mean consultants if you don't have it internally. Maybe graphics, maybe writing sometimes is not an internal skill set that you have. Don't be afraid to suggest that, but get the strongest people you have available to get this out the door.
Great, thank you. Mallory, I see some questions have come in. We just have a few minutes. Let me pause. Is there a question you've I know there's a lot of them. Peruse that you want to ask the panel?
Yes, so we've talked a lot about bad habits, but how do we know when we've actually slipped into a bad habit? Any thoughts?
That's a great question. And going back to those early definitions, they become unconscious, it becomes part of our unconscious and involuntary almost. And so my comment on that would be, hopefully we've got some kind of team performance reviews going on to where peers and managers and subordinates are providing us some kind of feedback on our performance. Absent that, we won't know. It'll be a habit we don't even know we have and that we've developed. And so if we don't have a culture of some companies call it this 360-degree performance reviews, there's probably a lot of blind spots and there's probably a lot of bad habits being formed. That would be my take.
I'm going to add a comment there, Brad, if you don't mind. The sibling methodology is out there for a reason. If you recognize that you're not using some of maybe the 4-box methodology to develop your executive summary because you're pulling it from other bids, well, that could be a bad habit. Use that methodology as our foundation. It's really what we use to know we're doing the best we can to develop good documents.
Good.
And Brad, my comment is, be always learning. I mean, we belong, all of us probably have in common APMP, and there's other organizations, that if you're paying attention and going to these, like they just had their big 2-day virtual webinar, a lot of new ideas out there, a lot of new concepts, a lot of new technology, a lot of agile versus stagnant, Scrum versus just ordinary. Be open to some of these things. Some of these things are actually improving how we do proposals, and if we are just internal to our own concepts and our own practices, we may have gotten into a bad habit that the industry has solved for us. So be open and always be looking for ways to improve.
Good. Mallory, anything else?
Yeah, I do have one more question that I do like. So for someone brand new to coordinating or managing, what is the one bad habit, each of you would caution someone not to make?
New to the business, and if we were to pick one, huh?
Yes, one.
I will pick my pet peeve, and then you guys,
Okay.
Liz and David, chime in. Mine would be circumventing proposal reviews and making a choice and a decision that those are not important. We can move on without them. That would be mine.
Yeah, and Brad, closely along with that, collaboration. I mean, yeah, you're expected to manage, and if you're new, you're probably a little bit gun shy, and you're probably a little bit, look at all these senior leaders and so on and so forth. Don't be introverted, be extroverted, go out there and talk to these people. Don't be afraid to maybe make a preliminary minor mistake, that kind of thing. Don't be so proud that you aren't afraid to take those steps and get out there and do it and follow the process.
I like that, David. I'm in agreement there a lot. I was going to speak to some of that too, but I'm going to have to go with prioritization and time management. When you work on a proposal, everything is a priority, and everybody's going to make their thing a priority. You are going to have to determine through a lot of those conversations that David was just talking about what the priority is. And maybe you're going to have to do it on a day-by-day basis. What's the priority for that day? But make sure you have your plan to address those things that need attention every day.
Fantastic. Good. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, and David and Liz. And let's just wrap this up with this. There are, and many of you who have heard this before, or you see it through APMP or other professional associations, there are certain ground rules. There are certain basic fundamental principles that drive proposal success. And we're going to share these 7, which are common. They're industry accepted, they're industry proven. And if we want to break bad habits, or we want to compare our performance and behavior against some standards, these are the 7 we need to keep in mind as proposal professionals. One is compliance. All right. There is no proposal that should be sent out the door or we should hit the submit button when we have not answered every requirement and followed the instructions. Baseline. We've got to be compliant. Competitive focus. Why David addressed this in overcoming, we can't be self-focused. We've got to make sure the customer knows why we're better than the other offers. And if we don't know who we're competing against, that's a whole separate challenge. That's a whole nother problem. But we've got to have some competitive focus in our proposals to set us apart and not fall in the habit of just relying on boilerplate reuse material. The third area, is it obvious why our offers should be selected? Why have we created some distance between us and competitors and not only been compliant, but gone so far as to be this next one, responsive? Responsive in a proposal means we're responding to some of the underlying issues. What is the mission of that particular government agency? What is their goal? Is it to better support the warfighter? Is it to prevent cyber attack? What's the underlying vision and mission and issue that the customer has? So we've got to be responsive. We touched on this, visuals, graphics, and action captions. Do they help us sell the message? The quality of writing is huge. We may not be able to win an opportunity based on the quality of our writing, but we certainly will lose. If we write poorly and we don't have customer focus in our writing, and that becomes a habit for us, good writing, we could lose some opportunities that we shouldn't otherwise lose. The final area that we ought to focus on and develop good habits around is make sure our page and document design is good. Make sure it's pleasant to look at, to read, to scroll through. Make it easy on the customer, the evaluator. If we'll focus in these 7 areas and try to build good habits and good process, good procedures around these areas, we have a much better chance of helping our companies win and compete. So that would be our recommendation overall. We will post this as well as some other best practices on the website for you. You can replay the webinar as well and share it that way. We do have one handout. If you haven't seen it, in your little control panel, there's a triangle called handouts. If you click on that, there is one handout that is a really good checklist for us as proposal managers. We can go through and just double check and make sure our proposal has addressed what it should and is the quality it should be. So please go take a minute, download that, save that, and have it, use it, make it your own. Liz and David, thank you so much. Mallory, thank you for keeping us on track. Sorry about the audio glitch we had there for just a second, and thank you all. Thank you all for your time today. Please be safe. Have a great rest of your day, and let us know if we can support you in any way. Take care, everyone.
Brad, thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank you, Liz.